Okay, so picture this. A single phone call, and that one call brings down this huge international human trafficking ring. Sounds crazy, right? Like something you'd see in a movie. But this is a true story. And today, we're going deep, really deep into how a missing person case, what seems like a routine thing, turned into this worldwide takedown. So get ready, you guys. This is pretty amazing. I mean, the power of just one person's concern and the ripple effect, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how it all started. You have this worried family member and they just call their local police, somewhere in Europe, just reporting a loved one missing. I'm sure they thought it was just, standard procedure.
Yeah, but there was something about this call, wasn't there? Maybe a detail the caller mentioned, or maybe just a feeling the investigator had, like a gut feeling that this was different. This wasn't just another missing person.
Yeah, exactly. And thankfully, they trusted their instincts. They dug a little deeper, and it turns out the missing person was last seen at one of those big international travel hubs, like one of those really busy airports. And that combined with, they saw some surveillance footage showing them with some shady characters, let's just say, and that's when things really changed.
So from a local missing person case, all of a sudden it's international. Huge. What was it? What was the first sign that this was organized, that this was human trafficking, a whole ring?
Well, they followed the trail and it led to a bunch of countries. I mean, a bunch. And it was obvious pretty quick that this was not like a random group of criminals. No, this was a network, a complex network. And they were exploiting all these vulnerable people, migrants, refugees, people looking for, something better. These people risked everything for a better life. And these criminals, they lured them in with these promises of jobs and education and you name it, taking advantage of their hopes.
It's just awful. They leave everything behind, they risk it all for a chance at a new life, and then they end up trapped in this nightmare.
So did they figure out like how these guys were able to stay hidden for so long?
Oh yeah, they definitely weren't just like winging it. These guys were organized. They were very intentionally staying hidden. They had all the tools,
Yeah.
encrypted communication, shell companies, the whole nine yards. Their whole system was designed to do one thing: exploit people, make money off of them. But remember that first phone call.
Yeah, the one that started it all. It's like, I mean, it seems crazy that one call could unravel something so big and complicated.
Well, you see, that call, it led investigators to this gold mine of evidence, a burner phone. One of the traffickers was using it.
So the burner phone, that was the key. I mean, what kind of information, what can investigators get from a phone like that? And how did it help them, break the case wide open? Yeah, so these burner phones, they're meant to be anonymous, right? But they store a ton of information. I mean, think about it. Contact lists, text messages, call logs, GPS locations, all of that is like gold to investigators. And in this case, all that data from that one phone, it connected all the dots. It showed the whole web of people that were involved in this terrible thing.
That's unbelievable. One little piece of technology, something meant to be secret, it brought the whole thing crashing down. So, okay, we've got the local police, right? And they have this evidence from the phone. But they're facing this criminal network that's all over the world. What happened next?
Well, they realized pretty quickly they needed help. I mean, this wasn't something they could handle on their own. So they brought in the big guys, Interpol, Europol, and police forces from all the countries that were involved.
Wow, so a global task force. That must have taken, so much coordination.
Oh, absolutely. The way these agencies work together, I mean, it's really something. They shared information, resources, you name it. I mean, think about this. They had to plan these raids. And not just one raid. They were happening all at the same time, all over the place. Europe, Asia, Africa, even the Americas. It was massive.
Yeah.
I mean, truly massive.
It's hard to even imagine. And this global takedown, it was a victory for sure. But we can't forget about the people who went through this. I mean, the human cost. Let's talk about Maria and Ahmed. They were both victims. And their stories, I think they really showed just how devastating human trafficking can be.
Right. Maria's story, unfortunately, is one we hear a lot. She thought she was going to be a nanny, a chance for a better life. That's what they promised her. But it wasn't like that at all. She ended up working 18 hours a day, no pay, constant threats. They crushed her hope for a better future. Just brutal.
That's just evil. What about Ahmed? What was his story?
His is just as bad, really. He was just trying to find work to support his family, so they smuggled him into another country. And instead of the job he was promised, he ended up in forced labor. They kept him isolated, guards watching him all the time, with guns.
I mean, the fear and the despair they must have felt. so far from home and completely helpless. It's hard to even think about. And the trauma they experienced, I mean, it doesn't just go away when they're rescued, does it?
No, it doesn't. For a lot of survivors, people like Maria and Ahmed, I mean, it's a long road to put their lives back together. They deal with PTSD, anxiety, depression. It's really tough.
It's a reminder that even though they took down this network, human trafficking is still out there. It's still happening. Maria and Ahmed's stories are so important, but we need to look beyond the individual experiences too.
I agree. This case, I mean, it was a win. But it makes us think about, the bigger questions. How do we stop this from happening in the first place?
Yeah, good point. So let's shift gears a little and talk about the big picture.
Yeah.
What are the key takeaways from this whole thing? What did we learn?
Well, one thing is just how huge this problem is. Human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar business. I mean, billions. And the sad truth is, as long as there's a demand for it, there will always be people who are willing to exploit other people for money.
It's hard to think about, greed fueling something so horrible.
Yeah.
But besides the size of the problem, what else did they learn? What else came out of this?
It really highlighted how important it is to have strong international cooperation. I mean, we saw it here, how all these different agencies from all over the world came together. They shared information, resources. That kind of collaboration, it's essential in a fight like this, against a crime that crosses borders like it's nothing.
Yeah, but getting that level of cooperation, I mean, all these different countries, different laws, different priorities, it must be really difficult.
Oh, it definitely is. It takes a lot of work, and a lot of commitment from everyone.
And then there's technology. It seems like, in a way, it's both a tool for the traffickers and a weapon against them.
That's a really good point. It's definitely both. Traffickers, they use it to communicate, to recruit people, even to move money around. But then law enforcement, they're using it too. Data analysis, AI, even blockchain technology. They're using it to try to disrupt these networks.
So it's like this constant race, right? Both sides are trying to stay ahead of the other. What stands out to you the most from this whole operation? What really struck you?
It's the resilience of the survivors. I mean, they went through something truly awful. But their strength, their determination, I mean, it's really inspiring. It gives you hope. They remind us that even when things are so dark, there's always hope.
Yeah, you're right. Their stories are so powerful. And they remind us that there are people out there fighting for justice, people working so hard to rescue victims and bring these criminals down.
And those people deserve our support. They need our attention, our action.
Absolutely. So as we keep going with this deep dive, I want to focus on something you mentioned earlier. Technology's role in fighting human trafficking. It seems like we're just starting to see what's possible.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We've seen how it can be used to track criminals down and gather evidence. But what if we could use it to be even more proactive,
You mentioned being more proactive. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about this. What if we had AI, artificial intelligence, constantly scanning data, looking for those patterns, those red flags? It'd be like having this digital detective always on the lookout.
So it would be analyzing all this information,
Yeah.
stuff that would take humans forever to go through.
Exactly. And it could be looking at all sorts of things like financial transactions, social media, even travel patterns, anything that seems off, anything that can mean trafficking is going on.
So instead of waiting for something to happen, we'd be trying to stop it before it even starts.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Right. I mean, early detection, that means faster intervention. We could rescue victims before they're moved, across borders. And we could break up these trafficking rings before they get really established. I mean, we could potentially save so many lives.
Wow, that's incredible. It's almost like a pre-crime unit, but for human trafficking. But it can't be that easy, right? There must be some challenges with something like that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, using AI like this, it brings up some complicated questions. Like, what about data privacy? That's a big one. We can't just use this technology any way we want. We have to be responsible. We have to make sure we're protecting people's rights.
Right. It can't just be about security. We have to think about privacy, too. But if we get it right, the benefits, I mean, wow. So besides AI and data analysis, what are some other ways technology can be used to fight trafficking?
Well, we can give individuals and communities, we can give them more power with technology. Like, what if there were apps that let people report suspicious activity without anyone knowing who they are? Or platforms that connect survivors with the help they need.
Those are great ideas. It would help people feel less alone, less scared.
Exactly. Technology can give people a voice. It can connect them to resources, and it can help them get their lives back.
It's about giving the power back to the victims, making it easier for them to get help and harder for the traffickers to hide.
And that's something we can all help with. Even if we're not, tech experts, we can learn about the signs of trafficking, we can support organizations that are fighting it, and we can just be more aware in our own communities.
So it really comes down to awareness and action. This deep dive has been, well, eye-opening is a good word. We've seen how complex human trafficking is, how much it hurts people, and how many different ways we need to approach it.
It's a global problem, and the solution has to be global too. And technology, that's just one part of it.
So as we wrap up this conversation, what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from this? What do you really want them to remember?
I think it's this. Don't lose hope. I know it's a dark subject, but there are so many people and organizations out there dedicated to stopping human trafficking. Their commitment, their passion, all the work they're doing, it reminds us that things can change.
That's powerful. We're not alone in this.
Yeah.
Even small things can make a difference. I mean, this whole thing started with one phone call. But what if that call started something even bigger?
Right. What if it was the beginning of a global movement where we use technology and compassion to end this awful crime? Where everyone knows the signs of trafficking and feels like they can do something, where victims get the support they need, the help they need to rebuild their lives.
A world where no one has to go through that, where everyone is free, where everyone has dignity and respect. That's the world we need to fight for.
And it's a fight we can win together.
This has been The Deep Dive. We'll keep exploring these important issues in future episodes. Until then, stay informed, stay aware, and don't lose hope. Because even one voice can change the world. It's really inspiring to hear about all the work that people are doing to fight human trafficking and the progress they're making. I mean, this deep dive has really shown how complicated it is. I mean, the way these criminals operate, the fact that it's all over the world, it's a lot. But it's also shown us that collaboration and technology, they can really make a difference.
Yeah, this case is a great example of that, isn't it? One phone call. It seems like such a small thing, but it set off this whole chain of events that led to this huge criminal network being taken down. It really shows that, we can all do something. Every little bit counts.
You've mentioned public awareness a few times. What are some things that people should look out for? How can they tell if someone might be a victim of trafficking? What are the signs?
Well, there are a few red flags. Like if you see someone who seems like they're being controlled by someone else, or if they seem, really scared or anxious, or like they just want to be left alone, those are things to watch out for. And also, if someone doesn't seem to have any control over their own, ID or money, that's another sign.
Yeah, those aren't things that people always notice, or they might think it's something else. Is there anything else we should be looking for?
Think about working conditions. If someone is working like all the time, or if they're not getting paid, or if they're living in some place that's really bad, those could be signs of forced labor. And be careful of jobs that sound too good to be true, especially if they're in another country. Be suspicious of those.
That's a good point. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So what happens if someone thinks they see trafficking happening? Should they try to do something themselves? Or is it better to call the police?
It's usually not a good idea to try to intervene yourself. It can be dangerous for you and for the victim. It's better to call the police or the National Human Trafficking Hotline. They know how to handle these situations, and they can make sure everyone's safe.
So knowing the signs and trusting your gut and calling the right people, that's so important. This deep dive has really been, it's been a lot to think about. But it's also, it's given me hope.
Yeah, me too. Fighting human trafficking, it's hard, but we're not going to give up. With more awareness, more collaboration, and using technology the right way, we can make things better.
We can make a world where everyone is safe, where everyone has the chance to live a good life, a life with dignity. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Oh, it was my pleasure. And remember, anyone can make a difference, even one person.
This has been The Deep Dive. And we'll be back with more important topics, more deep dives in future episodes. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay involved.